off, right?
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Wallerstein's thesis and book makes like a framework to understand historical changes involved in the rise of the modern world. He breaks up countries into 3 or 4 main categories to describe like the establishment of the capitalist economy, the division of labor, and the relationships between different countries. The core group benefited most from the capitalist world economy. The Northern Europe countries were the first core regions. They had strong central governments, extensive bureaucracies, large armies, and they obtained control over like international commerce and surpluses. The next group would be the periphery. They lacked strong central governments. They relied on coercive labor practices. They usually exported raw materials, and they were usually controlled by other states. The semi-periphery is the countries that are in between these two extremes. They kind of have their core regions in decline or periphery regions on the rise. And then external areas like Russia have their own economic systems, but they managed to stay outside of this model.
Industrial revolution from Europe, spreading industrialization to India, helped India become industrialized, and because of the industrialization came better education, and with this people could go to school and become doctors and help be advanced in medicine, and with the medicine and the aid that they had, it helped more people to get better and poor countries to get the help that they needed. And with better people, the population grew. And an example of this is Doctors Without Borders. And some information about that was created in 1971 by doctors in France. And it's an international humanitarian organization working in nearly 70 countries to assist people whose survival is threatened by violence, neglect, or catastrophe. In 1999, they received the Global Peace Prize.
Something that's been brought up against Wallerstein's theory is that the world is becoming flat in the sense that there's not a lot of competition and few select leaders. This is wrong because without a leader, the world or any type of group is able to function. Any group needs a leader so that that leader can excel above everybody else and raise the bar for what they want to become. So the thought that the world is becoming flat through the power, everybody's level and has the same amount of power, is wrong because there's always going to be somebody who is stronger or has more supplies.
So we, the opposition, still stand firmly against the resolution that Emanuel Wallerstein's world economic model best explains the world economy since 1850. One of many theories, Wallerstein's is not the best. In fact, it is inherently flawed as it does not completely explain the world economy. Let us start with the phrase, since 1850. 1850 is an arbitrary time. Wallerstein's model is not necessarily a model for the time between 1850 and present because it requires adequate transportation between countries to involve the flow of resources. For example, there is the viable argument that poor countries remain poor because they are affected by biology, lack of similar resources, and pandemics which persisted into the 19th century and beyond. Why were some nations rich and poor at and before 1850? Prior to that, the model described in guns, germs, and steel is more applicable, and those trends of geography playing a vital role in past the import and export of resources stand strong as a trend beyond 1850. If Wallerstein is right, then there is no hope of a poor nation becoming rich, simply because it's constantly being sucked dry by the cycle of wealthy nations taking from it. The cycle suggested by Wallerstein's theory ensures that more impoverished nations relying economically on exports to wealthy countries drawn from their natural resources will never be able to break out of this cycle. A direct counter to that are the four nations referred to as BRIC countries: Brazil, Russia, India, and China, which are all deemed to be at similar stages of advanced economic development. These countries stand as a symbol of the shift in economic power away from the developed G7 economies towards the developing world. Their economic potential is such that they are projected to become among the most dominant economies in 2043, as well as forming a bloc to the group of 8 states. This economic dominance is distinctly contrary to Wallerstein's theory, as the BRICS, some of whom were former colonies of the wealthy nations, are breaking out of his proposed economic cycle and set to dominate the world economy. Also, the dependency theory says that wealthy nations actively counter attempts by dependent nations to resist their influences by means of economic sanctions and/or the use of military force. In fact, wealthy nations don't always effectively counter these attempts. If they did, then China wouldn't be undergoing the biggest boom in the world. It would still be having its resources sucked out of it courtesy of Britain. India, China, Vietnam, as well as Eastern Europe, Brazil, and Russia are also indicative of this trend. In addition, in Wallerstein's theory, the economy is portrayed as stagnant because it is in a constant state of pull from rich countries and give from poorer nations. What with the admittedly alarming fluctuations of the economy today, this is obviously not the case. Also, some theorists argue that the core and periphery relations are not important only as exchange relations, as Wallerstein argues, but also, and more importantly, as the power dependence relationships, that is, as class relations. The idea of a world system is also questioned by some theorists as being void of historical consistency and of not being a full theory in itself. Wallerstein's theory is only based on looking at one particular part of history, namely the British Empire, and using this to come up with a whole notion of the world system. He does not take culture into consideration either, disregarding culture and class. His theory is too prone to generalization and lacks quantitative data. For example, class-based interactions, which largely shape the world economy, are not mentioned. To a certain extent, geography no longer defines the world economy in the sense that the world can't be broken down neatly into cores and peripheries. As Albert Bergensen said, Wallerstein's most recent writing reduces culture to a false consciousness, a system that contains contradictions, transforms hierarchy into difference, motivates people to work, and blinds them to the growing inequities and global deterioration. Bergensen argues that in reality, the social and political determine the economic. The expansion of the world economy results from prior political and cultural expansion. Although we do not believe that Wallerstein's theory is, in its entirety, completely wrong, we do believe that because of inherent flaws, it is not the best model for the world economy since 1850. With that in mind, we still stand strongly against the resolution that Immanuel Wallerstein's world economic model best explains the world's economy since 1850.